Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and there is another shift happening in the retro game collecting market. And I want to talk about that really quickly here. Now, not only am I seeing this at the online retail level and also at the brick and mortar retail level, but I'm also seeing it at the collector level. And I got to see some of these changes firsthand. First off, I want to say a big shout out to the collector who made a trade with me last night. Yesterday, I went to a local trade meetup where collectors brought a lot of their items and we were able to trade games, and we were also able to sell games to each other. So it was a really cool event. I got to meet a lot of really cool people, including subscribers of the channel. So shout out to all of you who I got a chance to meet. It was great having conversations with you all. And the gentleman traded me this copy of Pokemon Leaf Green with another GBA game. And I traded him my like new 2DS XL, the Legend of Zelda version. I didn't really need that in my collection anymore. And so a few people had expressed interest. I just didn't really need the handheld, and I didn't have Leaf Green, so made a trade with him. He was happy, and it was a cool night. Now, this trade event was honestly different from the last one that I went to. I'd actually gone to an event like this over the summer, and there was a really big difference in the two events. So during the summer event, there was a lot of genuine interest, not only from just casual buyers and game collectors, but there was also a lot of reseller interest as well. And so I was able to do well at that event, better than I had anticipated, partially due to resellers and partially due to collectors. With this event, it was different. Now, I would say I did probably about as half as good as I did at the first event, just in terms of like sales and trades and stuff. But there was a big difference. The biggest difference that I recognized at this event was that there were a lot less resellers. And it was just really more so a genuine community of collectors, people looking to just build and add to their collections. I was able to stand with a few people, talk about video games, talk about different games I played, listen to them talk about the games that they were playing. And it had very much a more organic and just genuine, retro gaming community vibe. And it was a really cool event. But there were a few things that I did notice just being there. One of the biggest things that I noticed about the event was that people are a lot less wowed by certain games. There was a time where, rare games or just uncommon games kind of garnered a lot more interest and intrigue. And I feel like at this point in the retro game collecting cycle here in the Q4 of 2025, I feel like there is a lot less of a wow factor when it comes to, more rare and obscure games. And there's a reason for that. I think the biggest reason for that is because there are a lot less new collectors getting into the hobby. And so because there are a lot less new collectors, most of the collectors that are going to these events, that are going to these expos, that are going to these conventions and even meetup groups, they've already seen all of the old rare stuff because they've been collecting for a long time. The only people who kind of get impressed by Super Nintendo games or Sega Genesis games or, certain PlayStation 1 games are the people who are probably new to the hobby. They've probably seen a YouTube video that said that those games were worth a lot. And because they're now seeing some of these games for the first time in person, they're kind of wowed by it. And I think the wow factor is gone. And a lot of collectors are just kind of taking a very matter of fact approach towards the games that they're seeing and the games that they want to add to their collection. I felt like I had a pretty good selection at the meetup event, but there were folks there that had way better stuff than me, way more rare, obscure stuff than me. You had a guy there who had a Wonder Swan. You had someone there with an original Virtual Boy. You had a dude there with a complete in box Jaguar. You had dudes there with, Turbo Duo consoles. You had folks that had complete in box copies of Growlancer, the Lunar series, obscure Sega Saturn Japanese shoot 'em ups, obscure PlayStation 2 games. So, there were folks there that had some really spectacular stuff. I'm talking first print edition or first edition Neo Geo games with a hard clamshell case. Really, really cool stuff there, right? But a lot of people were glazing over those items and they weren't really wowed by them because, most of the collectors there knew that these items were in existence and they'd probably already seen them, and they weren't really kind of, wowed by it so much. They weren't really interested. Now, what a lot of people were interested in, surprisingly enough, were modern games. A lot of people were really interested in a lot of the Switch games that I brought to the event. They were really intrigued by not just the common stuff, but they were intrigued by kind of like the, uncommon Switch stuff, the stuff that you don't really hear about, the more off the beaten path Switch games like The Last Faith or Tevi or, certain strictly limited shoot 'em ups. It looked like people were trying to fill out their Switch collections. Even the Pokemon games, honestly, weren't as popular this time around as they were before, because again, the only people that are going to go to an event like that hunting down all the Pokemon games 9 times out of 10 are going to be resellers. So if there were more resellers at the event, I'm sure a lot more of the Pokemon games would have been purchased. But because the majority of the people there are collectors who are kind of niching down to the games that they genuinely want to play and have in their collection, they weren't wowed by Pokemon games. And to me, this kind of signals, another shift in the retro game collecting market, another shift in the retro game collecting life cycle. And I'm not even just talking about pricing, prices are going up or prices are going down, because to me, this is bigger than pricing. This is more about a paradigm, about a mindset shift, about a community shift and a migration of speculation out of the hobby and into other things like Pokemon cards or Labubus or whatever. And the community's kind of reverting back to its core audience where people kind of know what they want. They're niching down. They're not as easily impressed, and they're taking a more of a matter-of-fact approach to the hobby. And I think it's awesome. I think it's great because it removes a lot of the fluff, it removes a lot of the hype, and you're able to have more straightforward conversations about the games that you want to, buy and trade for. And will this have an impact on resellers? For sure. I think resellers are going to have a lot harder of a time moving some of these rare and obscure games because that is no longer their audience. And the reseller audience is now what I pretty much assumed in a previous video, is that low-lying fruit, the sports games, the low-dollar games, the cheap games, because those cheap games are the games that are going to move for them, and they're going to move for them on Amazon. And you're probably going to see a shift in your local mom and pop stores and even at GameStops. You're going to start to see more rare games sit on the shelf and more cheap games go flying off the shelf, because that's the stuff that resellers are looking for. So if you're a collector, that's great for you, because now you don't have to worry about someone coming in and buying up all the rare stuff, because again, that stuff isn't moving for resellers like it used to, and they're not even interested. They want the Wii Fit Sports. They want the Wii Sports Resort. They want all that cheap stuff, because that's where they're able to move that stuff on Amazon. And I think this shift is very interesting, and I think we're gonna see more of this impact, I think, in 2026. But let me know what you guys think about this thought process. Is this something that you've seen near you, or are all the rare games still just getting, bought up by all the resellers in your area? Let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one. It's the Y2K Collector. Oh, and I do have a really sweet video coming up for you guys. I know you guys see all these games and I never show you footage of me picking them up. So you're like, Y2K, you didn't pick those up in the wild. I've got a lot of footage of me in the wild. So stay tuned for my next edited video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.